contraceptive methods. Nurse practitioner Kate Wagner sees some patients who are anxious that their reproductive rights could be further impacted with this upcoming election.
Good morning, lady.
Good morning.
Some of our patients would, show up and they would say, my device is due to be, replaced next year, but I want to go ahead and have it replaced sooner than that because I'm worried about, the politics changing.
Kate says one of the biggest challenges is not just getting birth control, but getting the right method.
If folks realized how much you have to go through to get birth control that worked for you. It's not just one size fits all.
Missouri was the first state to outlaw abortion after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade.
What is the culture around family planning in the state of Missouri?
I would say the culture of family planning in Missouri constitutes a lot of fear and secrecy. I remember somebody called the office and asked if she needed to rip her IUD out herself. She was so scared.
It was in that aftermath that Maggie Olivia tried to pick up her prescription for birth control.
I ultimately ended up leaving and without birth control.
Maggie, who now works for a reproductive rights group in St. Louis, said the pharmacist denied her prescription because they were unsure if it was legal, which it was.
How does that experience sit with you today?
It feels infuriating. It definitely felt like I was doing something wrong.
2 months later, she got pregnant and crossed state lines to get an abortion.
When you can't control the care that your body can receive, it's a devastating feeling of powerlessness.
Maggie is not alone. In a state where tensions have long boiled over reproductive rights, family planning experts say women face mounting barriers to accessing contraception because of post-Roe politics, sowing fear, confusion, and anxiety among providers and patients.
Politicians purposefully conflate abortion and birth control. Our polling shows that almost 30% of Missourians don't believe or don't know that all forms of birth control are legal.
That confusion, a strained healthcare system, and contraceptive deserts covering much of Missouri make accessing birth control more challenging.
Contraceptive deserts, what are they and why do they exist here in Missouri?
Yeah, so a contraceptive desert is where there is not great access to contraceptive services. People may still have to travel, 50, 60, 100 miles.
Say that there's contraception deserts, I guess I would respectfully disagree.
Denny Hoskins is a Republican senator and voted in favor of a bill that would have excluded emergency contraceptives from Missouri's Medicaid program.
They do have adequate access to contraception in Missouri.
But didn't the state specifically take action to not support funding for contraception?
We did. Most certainly, I don't think that it should be paid for by taxpayer dollars.
6 in 10 women in Missouri are concerned about elected officials passing laws that limit access to birth control.
I've been doing this work for almost 20 years and have seen the chipping away about our rights, and I was really focused on abortion. And then over the last few years, we've really seen birth control also become part of that conversation.
That's why family planning advocates are pushing to pass an amendment on Missouri's ballot this year. The constitutional amendment would ensure a person's fundamental right to reproductive freedom, which would include abortion and birth control.
It's really a proactive measure that will keep politicians from being able to restrict that access instead of constantly having to defend for our rights.
Had this constitutional amendment been in place in 2022, I would have never been denied birth control, would have never had to flee the state, I would have never had to keep secrets from my doctors. Everything would have been different about that experience.
She's one of millions who will vote on safeguarding contraception, also on the ballot in Maryland and Nevada. Dasha Burns, NBC News, St. Louis, Missouri.
You are watching NBC News Daily on this election day, and you can watch us free 24/7 on our streaming network, NBC News Now. You can take us wherever you stream, including YouTube, Hulu, Roku, and Peacock. Your news continues after these short messages.
Ago, I escaped from you. And now, you're going to help find people just like me.
For this swing state of Michigan, where they're going to register, they're going to get their precincts.
But you've also been speaking to young voters, and that's really where Vice President Harris has been putting the spotlight, focusing on those young Michigan voters going to Michigan State University, for example, on Sunday. What are the candidates' closing messages for young people?
Yeah, and I'm going to ask my photographer to just walk outside this area because I don't want to disturb the voters that are coming in, guys, as I answer this question. But you're right. I mean, listen, Michigan State University, you talked about it, right? Vice President Kamala Harris addressing students there, kind of talking about ending the war. She mentioned that in her speech in East Lansing, talking about the economy, talking about, for instance, how those students are the future of this country. Both candidates, by the way, focusing in on these young voters. And they feel as if a lot of young voters are going to come out on a day like today, many of them kind of last minute voters, right? Leaving things to last minute, like studying for their by the way, voting in the presidential election. Just when we talk about turnout numbers, though, we're looking at 60%, by the way, so this is pretty amazing. 60% early voting in person in East Lansing, right? That's where Michigan State University is. 44% in Ann Arbor, where University of Michigan is as well. So it'll be really interesting to see those young turnout numbers when all is said and done at the end of the day, Morgan.
All right, Yasmin Vasugian, live in Michigan for us. Thank you, Yasmin.
All right, let's head down south to NBC News correspondent Antonia Hilton, who joins us now from Raleigh, North Carolina. Antonia, you've been talking to voters all day and really for weeks now about issues like minimum wage, race relations. What are some of the other top concerns that people there are telling you they're focused on this election cycle?
Well, Morgan, I can tell you it's hard to talk to voters for more than a minute and not end up talking about abortion here. And that's young voters, older voters, that's women and men. I just had a conversation with a father here who voted with his daughter in mind. Take a listen to some of our conversation.
My daughter is going to be facing laws that maybe, hopefully not, laws that affect her body and her decisions. It frightens me where the country has gone, and if this is a possibility.
It's been interesting because there's a lot of reporting lately about men, especially young men, perhaps leaning toward Trump right now, caring less about reproductive rights than, say, their female classmates or sisters or friends. And what I found, at least here in North Carolina, is there are a lot of men, fathers of young children, or college-aged men who actually care very deeply about abortion rights. In fact, during the early voting period, I kept meeting young guys who came to the polls with their sisters or their girlfriends. And literally when I would ask them, well, why are you here? Or as a guy, why would you mention abortion? They would just point to the woman in their life and say, well, I'm here because I'm worried about her losing her rights. And I think if there's one sort of sleeper dynamic here that could change North Carolina, that could bring us to something like 2008, it very likely could be the way people feel about abortion here, guys.
Really interesting to hear what you're hearing from the voters today. We also spoke with you yesterday, Antonia, about election integrity concerns, anxious voters. Talk to us about what else you're hearing. What's the atmosphere like today?
The atmosphere is overall pretty smooth and positive. I mean, Wake County here, this has the highest voting population, the highest number of precincts, and a major turnout here. This is for both parties important, but certainly for the Democrats and their sort of stronghold, sort of metro areas. This is a key part of the state. But, you know, there have been some verbal back and forths between voters who disagree vehemently on some of the issues. But overall, things are moving incredibly smoothly here in North Carolina. And this is a state that's going to get its results out relatively quickly, too, guys.
Okay.
All right, Antonia Hilton there on the ground. Antonia, thanks, as always.
Let's go over to NBC News correspondent Ellison Barber joining us now from Sewanee, Georgia. So, Ellison, you're there in Gwinnett County. We've actually focused on that area as part of the NBC News Deciders series. Walk us through why it has been front and center for both parties this election cycle.
Right, I mean, if you just look at Gwinnett County with sort of a bird's eye view, you're going to see it and say, okay, well, that leans blue. Why do we care? It's a good question because this is a county that leans blue, but it matters significantly to both parties because the margins here matter a lot. You look back at 2020, Donald Trump carried 40% of the vote in this county. If Republicans can expand what he got in this county by just a few percentage points and hold on to the Republican strongholds across this state, then they're going to be well positioned to potentially really carry this state. On the flip side, Harris and the Democrats are looking at this as an area where they hope they can increase their turnout to avoid that from happening. Local Democrats, as well as the Harris campaign, they say they've tried to really focus in this county in particular on what they describe as hard to reach likely Harris voters. I mean, somebody who probably would lean Democrat or vote for Harris, but maybe doesn't vote in every election cycle. The local chair of the Democratic Party for this county said that they had been targeting those voters in particular in the lead up to election day and early voting, making sure they were targeting them with digital ads, sending mailers to them in more than a dozen languages, hoping they can get their margins up more in this county as well. This is an interesting county because it's a big county. It's incredibly diverse. And when you look at the population here, they've had massive population growth in the last 20 years in particular. In the last decade, this county has grown population-wise by about 19%, and about 25% of the people living in this county, they were not born in the United States. So it's a diverse county. It's a big county. It matters a lot to both campaigns, and they're trying to get higher turnout numbers here.
Yeah. Thanks for that additional context. Ellison Barber in Gwinnett County. Thank you.
Meanwhile, the FBI is out with a new warning today about election-related disinformation as well as propaganda after they have identified 2 fake videos today.
This is now the 5th warning from a federal agency in just the past 2 weeks related to misleading election content online.
NBC News Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Delaney joins us now. Ken, the FBI put out a new statement this morning about these fabricated election-related videos, but what are they doing about it?
Well, what they're doing is they're trying to inoculate the public by calling this out. And this was a particularly insidious fake video, guys, because it told people to stay home and vote remotely because of a terror threat at polling places. Obviously, there's no such thing as remote voting. It was designed to suppress the vote. And they didn't say whether this was a foreign origin or domestic. They issued this warning, though, because it purported to be, it was a fake video that purported to be from the FBI. So they wanted to clear that up. But just stepping back, the FBI and the intelligence community has essentially warned that Russia is in an information war with the American electorate, and they are circulating lots of fake videos designed to reduce confidence in the outcome of today's election and designed to make people think there's fraud when there isn't fraud, and also designed to suppress the vote. So the best advice we can give people is if you see a video or audio that suggests you need to change the time and the manner of your vote, check that out. Call your local county election board, your state election officials, because there is a lot of disinformation circulating online. Some of it is foreign, some of it is domestic, some the FBI is warning about, but others they're not seeing. And so people really have to be their own advocates and their own fact checkers on this stuff, guys.
It's so important, Ken. A great reminder there. And to go back to the foreign actors aspect of this, federal officials really do believe Russia and Iran are the biggest threats of foreign influence in this election. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, that's right. And they've said that Russia wants Donald Trump to win, Iran wants Kamala Harris to win, but they both want to sow discord. And what they're really worried about is what happens after today. In the days going forward, they're very concerned that Russia is going to try to make people lose confidence in the result of this election, believe that there was fraud, particularly among Trump supporters if Trump loses, a repeat of what happened last time. And they're just worried that Russia is going to stoke those flames with a series of fake videos. But what they're doing that they have never done before is they are calling it out when they see it. When they can attribute a piece of disinformation to Russia or Iran, they are issuing a statement, we're reporting it. The idea is to inoculate the public from this stuff. Whether that will succeed remains to be seen, guys.
All right, Ken Delaney, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
You bet.
And coming up next, we will take you to the Southwest, where voters in Arizona and Nevada could have a major impact on the state of this race. How the Democratic Party is fighting to hold their ground there. More NBC News Daily right after this short break.